Do you remember when we were kids and someone would like point a finger at you and say, accuse you of something? And you'd say, hey, if there was one finger pointing at me, there are three fingers pointing back at you. I think there was more wisdom in that statement than we realized in our childlike taunts. Sometimes we find ourselves in really frustrating or even painful circumstances, and we find ourselves pointing the finger of blame at others, pointing the finger of blame at God, saying, why is this happening? But it's important that we come before the Lord with a search me heart, with a, Lord, what's pointing at me? The reality is sometimes we are going through pain. That is the result of the things that have been done to us. We live in a sinful world, and people who are walking in sin are still graciously being given time and opportunity to repent and to turn from that sin, just as we were given opportunity. And so when those people willfully reject God's opportunities and they continue to behave selfishly and destructively, there are people on the other side of those selfish, sinful, destructive choices experiencing the effects of that sin. And sometimes our pain and our discomfort are indeed the result of the choices that have been made by others, just as there are those who experience pain and discomfort as a result of our choices. And it is true that the Lord does allow us sometimes to go through pain and difficulties as a way to go through a season of shaping and refining us to become who He's called us to be. But sometimes we're facing pain and discomfort because of our choices. We're blaming God for allowing us to experience the result of the very things He didn't want for us. We wanted it, and the Lord allowed us to experience it. For example, in Numbers chapter 20, the people are on the cusp of entering the land, and they come to a place where there's no water. Well, this has happened before, way back in Exodus 17, when they had just come out of Egypt. But now it's been 40 years, right? They're facing waterlessness again, and they complain, and they say, Lord, why have you brought us from Egypt to this evil place without grain or fig or grapevine or pomegranate, and there's no water to drink? Right? They're blaming Moses. Why have you brought us here? They're blaming God because Moses is simply following the cloud by day, the fire by night. So ultimately, they're pointing the finger at God. God, why have you brought us to this awful place? It's a place of barrenness. There's no grain here. There's no figs here. There's no pomegranates, no vines, and no water. Why are they here? They haven't stopped to consider they're in this place. Not because this is what God had wanted or what Moses had wanted. They're here because of what they had chosen. They were supposed to be in the land decades ago. Back in Numbers 13 and 14, they had been on the cusp of entering into a land where the grape clusters were so large that they were being carried on poles. But they chose the word of the spies rather than the word of the Lord. The reason they're in this terrible place is not the fault of Moses or Aaron. It's their own fault. It's the fault of the people. They're not in the promised land enjoying the fruit God had for them because they failed to trust in the Lord. And here they are again, not trusting God, blaming God. They want to eat the fruit that comes with trust and obedience. And yet they keep repeating the same patterns of mistrust and disobedience. Failure to take responsibility for the consequences of our own choices. Failure to recognize that there are parts of your current situation that are not the Lord's doing, and they're not necessarily someone else's fault, but they're in fact a result of your own actions. Failure to recognize that will result in a repetition of the same personal, spiritual, relational cycle of failure. If I walk around blaming God, blaming everyone else, and never stopping to say, Lord, search me. Show me where I'm responsible. Show me what I could have done differently. I'll just find myself repeating the same pattern in an endless cycle. If in our relationships we're constantly playing the blame game, pointing to someone else's perceived failures, always focusing on what everyone else did to me, then we'll never change our own patterns of behavior that keep leading to the same negative cycles. If I don't learn from the past, my own past, I'm doomed to repeat it. So ask the Lord, show me, search me, cleanse me, heal me. I really, genuinely, Lord, want to make you smile.